Hey guys and girls, Ben from Sonic Safari here, and today I thought I'd try something a little bit different. So far I've been doing Logic Pro tutorials, and I thought just to change things up a bit, I would do an Ableton Live tutorial. Now if you're interested in doing more Ableton tutorials, please leave a comment below, and I can certainly do a lot more of that. So what are we doing today? Well, today I thought we would look at two things. First of all, something called follow actions, and another thing called dummy clips. Now, you might never have heard about these things, and we're going to explore that today and see where it could be useful in more of a production sort of context, writing, coming up with beats, and we're going to basically make an automatic glitch kind of machine where we can, glitch up some beats. But both of these things, follow actions and dummy clips, can also be very useful in a live performance context. Again, you could use it to trigger effects. It's basically a way of being able to trigger a bunch of actions and also to be able to store automation in a clip and easily recall that. So lots of uses for this. Anyway, let's start off with follow actions. And what I've got here in Ableton Live is I'm here in the session view. And by the way, this only works in the session view, follow actions. So what I've got here is a drum break, sort of drum and bass break. And you can see that at the moment, I've just got this set to loop, and it's just going to play around and around. If I trigger this clip, let's have a listen. Okay, cool. So we can hear that's just looping around. And notice that here I've got a few different variations. Okay, so what I've done here is I've basically just gone through and I've cut up this loop so that it's triggering from different drum beats here. All right, so you can see this one's just triggering the last drum beat. This next one's triggering this little snare bit. And this one's triggering a different loop. Okay, and now what I want to do is I want to be able to randomly cycle between all of these different variations. So the whole idea here is to create a bunch of variation so it doesn't get too boring. A little bit like, you do it in, say, Jungle, which is all about cutting out breaks and, keeping things moving and interesting. So the idea is I want to randomly trigger any one of these clips. Now, notice that all of these clips here are separated from this initial original clip here. So the idea is that if you leave a bit of a space, if you insert a scene here, and you could actually just say, create insert scene to insert a break. So if there's a break, a sort of empty scene like this, then what's going to happen is then that will stop the follow action. So the follow action is only going to apply to these clips here that are sort of in a row. So starting here with this sort of first clip here in this sort of series of clips, notice that if I click on the clip and come down here to my inspector, you notice that you might not see this by default. To bring up the launch settings, if we click this L for launch, you notice that here we've got this little section that says launch, and there's different launch modes and stuff here too. Maybe we'll talk about this another day, but for now what I'm interested in is this section called follow action. And at the moment I've actually already got a follow action applied. Now, in fact, let's look at the original break. If we come up to the top here and look at the original one, notice that there's a follow action here, and this is set to no follow action. All right, now we can choose what sort of follow action we want with these arrows here. See, there's actually two different arrows here. We could actually set two different follow actions. But if I click on this first one, you'll notice that this is at the moment set to no action. Now, we could also choose from this list. So we could have, when this clip plays through, we could have it stop, or we could have it play again. Now, this is kind of similar to looping, I guess, and I've actually already got loop turned on. So at the moment, it's just going to keep looping around, but this would be another way to do that. You could also say previous or next. So for example, if I wanted all these clips to play one after the other, and this could be good if you're doing like a live arrangement, and I actually use this when I'm performing live a lot. If I've got different sections of my song as different scenes, and I just want each section to play one after the other, I will just set this to trigger the next clip down when it's finished playing. All right. You could also jump back to the first. So for example, if we wanted these to play one after the other, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then when it gets to the bottom, we want it to go back to the top, you could tell this to go to the first clip in this series of clips. So it will just go back to the top, and then it would just play again. All right, so you could keep this whole sort of thing cycling around. So that could be useful. And then we've got the last two here. We've got any and other. Now, any, as you would imagine, is going to select any one of these clips. And what that's going to do is basically randomly select one of these clips. And that could be useful. Other is a bit different from any. They're pretty similar. Any will trigger any one of these clips, including potentially the same clip. All right, so it could play the same clip a number of times. But if we don't want a clip to repeat itself, we could choose other. All right, and that's actually what I've got here. So I've got all of these clips here set to other. All right, and I've actually used both of these slots. You actually don't need to leave both of these slots set to a follow action. You could have the second one set to no action, but I'll actually leave them both on other. So now any one of these clips is going to play any other clip, but not itself. Okay, so the idea here is directly under this drop-down menu, we've got a probability. And you'll notice that here, this is set to 1, and this goes up to a very large number, 999. So basically, if it's set to 0, it's not going to have any probability, meaning that it's not going to trigger one of these follow actions, but anything higher than 0, in this case, I've just set it to 1, it's going to trigger that follow action. Now, the idea is if you've got a bunch of different clips, you could have, different probabilities. And in fact, what we've got here is two different slots here for two different follow actions. So if we had two different follow actions, let's say this first one's set to other, but the second one is set to go back to the first clip, we could set a different probability. So we could say most of the time, let's say 2 times, so got a probability of 2 that it's going to go back to the first clip, but then there's a probability of 1 that it will play any other random clip. So that way you could set up almost like a coin toss, 2 different options, and you can set the probabilities down here. But in my case, I want that just to randomly trigger any other clip. So let's check this out. You can also tell it here how long you want the follow action to play, basically after how many bars. So in this case, I've just got, 1 beat pretty much. So each one of these is going to play sort of just 1 time round or 1 beat, and then it's going to go and play any other clip. So let's just try this out. If I launch this top clip, we'll see that it's randomly going to trigger any one of these other clips. Okay, so that's a lot of fun. You can see a quick way to get variation. So we're getting all these different clips triggering one after the other. So that's kind of fun. So that's follow actions in a nutshell. That's what they do. But I want to take this a step further and combine this with what are called dummy clips. Okay, so you can see here I've got another set open, and we've got the same drum breaks here on this drum actions track. All right, with my different drum breaks, but I've got this other audio channel here, and it's just an audio channel, so you could say create audio track, and this has got all these dummy clips. Now, you'll notice a couple of things. That first of all, here in my drum actions track, I've set the output of the audio, instead of going to the master, which is the default, I've set that to go to the dummy clips audio track. All right, so now all of the audio passing through this channel is going into this dummy clips channel. Now, why have I done that? Well, the reason is that what I want to do is I actually want to be able to apply different effects to all these different drum breaks. And I want these effects to be selected kind of randomly, almost making like an effects sequencer. So you'll notice that here on this dummy clips track, here I've got an auto filter, I've got a redux bit reduction, a frequency shifter, and a limiter at the end of the chain. Often if I've got some crazy effects going on, I'll just whack a limiter on there just so it can't go over 0 dB in clip. Okay, now you might be thinking, why didn't I apply all these effects onto the original drum actions? Like, couldn't I just have applied this on the one track. It looks like I've got a beat repeat there. Just ignore that. And in fact, you could do this all with the one track. But the thing is, what I want to be able to do is, first of all, trigger any one of these clips randomly with a follow action. But then I also want to randomly trigger a different effect. So we get different combinations rather than always having, say, this clip here having the same effect. I want to have random different effects on random different clips. So I'm passing the audio from the drum actions through the dummy clips track. All right. And you notice that here on the dummy clips track, the input is set to monitor the input. So we're actually listening to whatever's coming into this track. Normally that might be set to auto, in which case you'd actually be able to play these clips. So here what I've got, I'll set that back to in. So all of these clips here are just regular audio clips, all right? And we're actually not going to be able to hear them because notice that we're monitoring the input. We're not monitoring the playback. If this is set to auto, well, I'd actually just be playing this clip back. And you notice basically what I've got here is a silent audio clip. All right, so it's just a silent audio clip. I just recorded a bit of silence. I mean, it could actually be any bit of audio because we're not going to hear it. We're just using it really to store automation. And that's essentially what a dummy clip is. You don't hear the clip, it's just there to store automation and trigger things. And that's why it's called a dummy clip. All right, cool. So I'll set that back to monitor the input. And you can see here, basically what I've got, if I double click on one of these, for example, this one, I've got this bit crush effect. And if I come here, I should see that, yeah, if I go to the redux, we've got the bit depth here, or the sample right here. Notice that I've got some automation going on for this redux effect. All right, so what that's doing is it's actually changing the sample rate. So that sample rate is going down like so. And also it's turning that effect on. So if I was to come back, I think to the mixer, you notice that so if I come back to the redux effect, we've also got, turning that device on. So you can always, trigger anything basically on this track. You could turn devices on or off. You could, automate all of these controls, all right? And also some of these I've got like delay and reverb, and these are actually triggering ascend. So notice that I don't have a delay or reverb effect here on the actual dummy clips track. What I'm doing in, say, this delay clip is that I am triggering from the mixer automation. It's actually called an envelope here because this is a clip envelope as opposed to track automation. I'm triggering ascend to the delay. So you can see here just on this one beat, it's sending the audio to send B. And if I was to play that back, see here. Okay, so we can see that just for that one little beat, it's sent the audio to the delay. Great, so that's, each one of these is doing a different thing, all these dummy clips. So for example, here, I've got this filter down, and we can see that, again, what it's doing is it's triggering the auto filter, and it's filtering that down. So if I was to play that back. Cool. Okay, so we can see that we've got, all these different dummy clips doing different things. And also what I've got here is on each one of these dummy clips, I've got a follow action. So just like I've got follow actions on these drum breaks, here on the dummy clips, I've got a follow action, and the same thing. I'm just saying trigger any other clip. So it could trigger any one of these dummy clips. All right, and that way, we'll get a whole lot of random variation. Cool, and you notice that I've actually left one normal where there's basically no effects. And that way we get to actually hear the normal drums as well. And if I wanted to, I could also have the normal drum break here as well, this original drum break. So in fact, I'll just shift all these up so that the very first one is just the normal drum break and a normal dummy clip where there's no effects. All right, so every now and then it'll just trigger the normal break. So if I launch this as a scene, so it launches both of these clips on both tracks, we'll hear it's randomly choosing a different break, and it's randomly choosing a different dummy clip or a different effect. Let's check it out. Okay, so you get the idea. Actually, what I think I did is this top one doesn't have a follow action on it, so I could just quickly set up a follow action to say trigger any other clip. All right, and we'll do that again. Cool, so as you can hear, a lot of variation there. And this is a great way if you kind of just stuck for inspiration, and you want to try out a bunch of things, random combinations, you could come up with something really great that you might never have come up with before. Now, if we wanted to capture all this, we could make a new audio track. So if I say insert audio track, and I'll move this over here, and I'll just call this something like resample, because let's say I just want to be able to resample this, just basically record this. There's a couple of ways you could do this. I could actually set the input to, for example, could set the input or the output of this track to my resample track, or I can also, let's actually just do that. So I'll just set that to go out to my resample, and on my resample track, I will monitor the input, and we should be able to record in here. Let's just see. I'll need to record enable that track, of course. Just give it a moment. Okay, let's just see what happens if we record some of this. Cool, so you get the idea. Now this is all recorded into a new audio clip, and I could start editing this and cutting it up, and let's say I like this bit, I can just split that, edit, split Command E or whatever, and then I can start chopping this up. All right, that's one way to do it. I'll just delete that whole track though. Actually, no, I won't. Because, I'll get rid of that. And let's say another way to do this would be to send this dummy clips back to the master output, so we're hearing it. Now, another way you could record this if you wanted to actually have a bit more control over editing it would be to record this into the arrange view. So the way to do that is simply to click the record button up here, and then everything we're doing here in the session view is recorded into the arrange view, including all this automation. So let's check that out. So I'll hit record, and let's launch this. All right, so if I switch over to the other view with tab, or this button, see all this stuff's being recorded. Great. All right, now if I want to edit this, I can come up here and click this little button here, this orange button. So I'm switching focus here to my arrange view, and then I could, come in here and I could start editing all this stuff, right? I could start splitting this up and, cutting bits out, Command E, and, moving stuff around. You get the idea, and doing whatever I want. So this is a great way to work as well. Okay, so that's the basic idea with follow actions and dummy clips. Okay, let's take this a step further. So we've just seen how follow actions and dummy clips work. And here, what I've got is a sort of different setup where if we take this to its logical conclusion, rather than triggering a whole break or a little repeating loop of a break, what we could do is create a really random glitchy beat by simply triggering a whole bunch of one-shot drum samples. So you notice that here I've got a kick track, and each one of these is just a single kick sample, all right? And that's just triggering that one kick. All right, and I've got just a series of different kicks here. And again, I've got a follow action, so it's randomly after playing, gonna trigger any other one of these kicks. Now, this is gonna be quite hectic because basically there's gonna be no rests. If I wanted a rest, I could probably just set one of these kicks here If I come into, say, the clip view, I could set the clip volume and bring that down to 0 so it won't have any sound. So, you know, that would essentially be a rest, I guess. So you could put some rest in there as well if you wanted to, have it not quite so frantic. But for now, I'll just leave every single one of these triggering. And then I've got the same thing here on the snare. So I've got a snare track here, and here's just a bunch of one-shot snares, and they're all just going to play one after the other, randomly triggering a different snare. And same thing with the hi-hat. Here's a hi-hat track, and it's going to randomly trigger a different hi-hat, one shot. And these are all set to trigger after this, here under the follow action, just 1/16th note. So basically, each one of these is going to play 1/16th note. And, you know, these follow actions, they're doing it in time to, you know, your actual track. So they're all quantized. So what's going to happen is if I trigger all of these, it's randomly going to select a kick on the kick track, a snare on the snare track, and a hi-hat, and it's going to just cycle through all these one-shot samples. Also, what I've got is on each of these is I've got some different effects. So I've got, you know, a beat repeat on the hi-hat and a gate, and a beat repeat on the snare, and the kicks, well, actually just got a bit of a saturation. All right, so I think some of these I've set up sort of dummy clips here, where some of these it's actually automated to, you know, trigger the beat repeat. Or maybe not. Maybe the beat repeat's just randomly triggering just to add even more glitchiness. All right, cool. So let's just play this back and hear the chaos. Here goes. Okay, cool. Now, of course, we could record this into the arrange view if we wanted to. So I'll just hit the record button. Cool. Now, of course, this is never going to repeat, you know, especially when you've got multiple tracks doing random things. The chances of them doing exactly the same combination of things is pretty much very small. So now I could go through and, you know, this is just like a super quick way to generate some random beats. And you might decide, you know, maybe I go through and loop some of these if I like some of these. Like maybe I think this bar here, bar 3, sounded kind of cool. Let's check it out. So let's say I like that. Well, I could just select all these clips and make sure I've got them all. There we go. And, you know, move them all over. Whoa. Sorry. Move them all over to here and start, you know, maybe pasting them a bit. So I could just duplicate that a bunch of times, and that way it's going to repeat those. All right, and you notice that anything, even something quite random like this, if you start repeating it, your ear will start to hear a groove in there. So, you know, it could be a quick way to come up with, you know, a starting point for a cool glitchy beat. So I hope this has been useful, introducing these two concepts, follow actions and dummy clips. And I might do some more videos to show you how I actually use these for my live set. So until then, peace. Take care and make some great music. Cheers.